I am Magnus, and I will be sharing short stories about comics and art. Hello everyone. In this episode of Magnus Collects Magnus, I want to show you some international foreign editions of Magnus and Magnus-related comics. Welcome. I'll quickly glance through some international Magnus comics, starting here at home in Sweden with Magnus Robotarnas Överman. Then over to our neighboring country, Norway. And then I jump across the oceans with a funny little small comic from Australia. They also had some normal-sized ones. And a very strange bound comic that I'm not really sure about where it comes from when it comes to publishers. It contains American comics but has been rebound in Australia. Then from a series with many different characters in different issues, an example from Brazil with Magnus on the cover but actually not on the inside. A Mexican series with enormous amounts of different characters, and in some issues it was Magnus. Hollandaise comic. And a German one. Then later on there was also an oversized, slightly hardcover series produced in Germany. Quite beautiful ones. In France, they had Magnus both in his own title and also in one of those titles collecting different characters in different issues. They also made a series of bound comics, where this one has a nice original painted cover, while others reprint the American painted covers. I'll show this bound one also, even though the cover is a bit non-Magnus related. Then another French company produced a pocket issue and 2 albums. And in Italy they also followed the formula of one title specifically for Magnus and one title with different characters in different issues. I thought I would finish off with another Italian series where they kind of slightly redraw American covers for each issue. So I thought I would show them all. This one comes closest to the original. I'll also quickly glance through some international Solar and Turok comics, starting with Dr. Solar, Atommannen, Den nya superhjälten, the new superhero from Sweden. Then one from Norway. And also Turok from Norway. German Dr. Solar. Then a pocket-sized French Solar, along with an Solar album. French Turok, first in his own title, and then in one of those titles who switched characters from issue to issue. Also 2 Rebound albums from France. An Italian Dr. Solar. And Italian Turok. They're also in his own title, as well as in a title that kept switching characters. French-Canadian Turok, Fils de Pierre, Son of Stone. And finishing off with an Mexican Solar from one of those titles with very many issues and very many different characters in different issues. There's a number of German pocket books with kind of charming redrawn covers. And even on the back cover they concentrated on Magnus in the beginning, but as you will see later on they switched that. These books contained stories from several Gold Key books, like you can see here, Dagar, Robinsons and Turok, but also quite often Dr. Solar and others. It could be even several Magnus stories in each book. Sometimes a bit funny covers. And interestingly enough, Magnus does not have his famous white boots. The guy they put on drawing these covers had a bit of imagination. And towards the end they switched to Buck Rogers, but they still at least showed on the back cover that Magnus was still in the book. Same company also published pocket books from Marvel. And finishing off with a German pocket book that has Magnus and Conan in the title, but also showed that there are lots of other characters inside. The English TV Tornado was an oversized newsprint magazine reprinting lots of different characters and also their own stories. In several issues they have Magnus, sometimes with their own painted, with their own drawn covers also. In a few issues, like this one, they have stories that they made all by themselves that's never been published in America. And it was very short stories, maybe 2 or 3 pages, as this magazine really wanted to have very many titles. In this issue they had a bit of a special solution. They have reprinted the Gold Key art, but not only is it very abbreviated and reformatted, they've also only used a small subplot from the whole original issue. And to make that work, they reworked some panels, like in this panel and this panel. It was originally a character being rescued that didn't fit in TV Tornado's story, so they just draw him out of it. Some other panels have been rotated or had parts changed. Sometimes the text has been quite notably changed. But all in all, they made a little story that works. In this issue, yet another original story. 2 short pages of only one that actually contains Magnus. But then they found the format they wanted to stick to, and that was to split up most of a complete Gold Key story into several issues with reformatting. Since the pages are bigger here, they have more rows of panels. Issue 1 of Gold Key's Magnus was published in issues 11 to 16 of TV Tornado. Sometimes with Magnus on the cover. And then they continued with this split up republishing format with one exception. In issue 17 there is one last original story. Well, there were actually trade paperbacks with original stories also, but for the ones in TV Tornado, this is the last original story. As you can see, they really have very many different characters that they republish. And here's a cover totally committed to Magnus. TV Tornado also published hardcovers, their annuals, of which several contained Magnus. they took some Magnus stories and presented them as text stories. And also they had normally republished in slight oversize. In this book they had an original English story, never published in America. This book is a bit special. Magnus is right here on the cover, but actually not in the book. This one, there's a very short part of a US story is republished. And also they have a completely original text story. And there is also another English company that published a mixed book with different gold key characters, even with a bit of their own painting on the inside cover. And then a reprinted American story, along with other things like Solar and similar. Here's some French pocket books that might seem like a bit strange place to publish Magnus, but as you see, in this number, Magnus the Anti-Robot. If we look at it, yeah. Magnus stories in each one of these, which are of course a few of the total title. And there's also other gold key adventures, as well as cartoons. Then some of all the international modern Valiant comics that have been translated. First, from the really recent incarnation, a collection for the Bloodshot movie, back and front. Then from the at least more in-between Valiant days, a French magic, as well as a Spanish magic. Norwegian Magnus Robot Fighter claims to contain a poster, but since that's printed on the back of story pages, I find that a bit silly. Italian Magnus. Spanish Mutant Chronicles. And a Spanish trade paperback for Predator versus Magnus Robot Fighter. Italian Turok. This was a rather long sequence and even some variant covers. And even a bound collected edition. Spanish Ninjak. Spanish Shadowman. Italian XO Manowar. And a Spanish XO Manowar. And Finishing off with some Filipino books. There were also hardcovers printed in France of the Valiant Nintendo books. In Germany there were books with Shadowman, the game version. The first attempt in France to reprint Valiant Entertainment was made by Panini, put out a set of trade paperbacks. Unfortunately, it was difficult to find them in French comic stores. For the modern Valiant books that's been reprinted in French by Bliss Comics, it's easiest to just show you my bookshelf. This is still just a small part of all the books they published from Valiant, and they did a great job at conventions and other places marketing them. If you want to learn French, I recommend trying to compare these ones to the original. Beautiful books. Plus some books that I've put aside because I've gotten them remarked at conventions. Bliss also put out books for Free Comic Book Day and similar. Here's a Japanese book that came together with a crate with other stuff, and a Chinese Harbinger that was handed out at an event.